I'm glad to see so many of you. So we have almost 100 people here, but I'm so excited because we have one person who you were waiting for. So I'm talking about legendary Alan Cooper. We will be just two of us today, but don't worry, it will be the same interest from your side. And also we will talk about interesting stuff. So thank you for joining us. And I just want to say a few words before we will start that people, please be active. Do not hesitate to text your questions, to text your topics to our chat. We will read and answer to the most relevant of your questions. I just want to mention that don't forget that we are here like to talk with warm atmosphere and talk about everything. So don't focus on just like some basic stuff, and let's think about your questions wider, please. So without any other words, I want to welcome our guest, Alan Cooper. And Alan, please tell us, what are you working on now, like in your world, in your life and your world, and how does your career as a designer and as an interface designer, as a researcher, help you in your current stuff?
Hi, Mike. Thank you. Thank you. And hello to everybody who's out there. I can't see you, but I know you must be out there. That's a big question. So it's my wife, my business partner, Sue, and I sold our business 3 years ago, our Cooper, our consulting company. And we've been retired ever since then. And so the design work we're doing is very different. Sue's been mentoring some young women who are interested in getting into business, and she's been helping them out with just her advice. We have a local friend here in town who has a restaurant, has been struggling like all restaurants have through the pandemic, and she's been helping her to do things. And I've been working in my workshop. When I was a kid, my father was very handy with his hands. He worked as a builder, and he was an electrician, and he taught me how to build stuff with my hands and how to use tools. And and I learned that as an adolescent, your father is somebody that you worship, and then you get to that age where all of a sudden your job now is to be a rebel, is to break your ties with your parents and be independent. And so I did that, and I, left my dad. He thought I was crazy. He goes, "Why don't you go to electrician school? I can get you in." I go, "Oh, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do something different, And I discovered digital computers and never looked back. But after 40 years of working with pure thought stuff, with software and ideas and design and algorithms, I find that I crave things made out of atoms, things that you can touch and things that you can feel. So 10 years ago, we bought this rundown old dairy farm out in the country. It's about an hour north of San Francisco. And I took an old barn and I converted the barn into a workshop, and the barn is huge. I don't know what it is in square meters. It's almost 5,000 square feet, which is probably about, 600 square meters or something like that. It's huge.
Okay.
And it's 40 meters long by 10 meters wide.
Okay. It's a lot.
Big. So I half of it is a metalworking shop, with welding and fabrication and saws and plasma cutters and an entire machine shop with a lathe and a milling machine and drill presses and sheet metal tools and stuff. And the other half is all a wood shop. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I have the giant playroom. It's got a huge video screen in it, and it's got a sound system, so I can turn on music and just zone out making things. And that's what I do, is I make stuff out of wood and metal. I actually have a YouTube channel. If anybody's interested, you can see some of the things I've made. It's called Planet Al, A-L.
Okay. Sounds really professional, like for Netflix. I guess that you are waiting.
I just hack away at stuff is all I do. But there's a lot of value, I think, in changing what you do. So when I first left the physical world behind to work in the logical world of software, I learned so much. And to step away from the logical world of software back into the physical world of atom-based materials, it gives you a lot of insight. It's like when I stopped programming 20 years ago to focus on design, I gained a lot of insight into the meaning of programming and how programmers thought. It's, if you're a fish, the one thing you're unaware of is water.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a programmer, the one thing that you're unaware of is the culture of programming. And if you're a designer, it's really easy to be unaware of the culture of design. And so it's really easy to step away from it's not easy. It's really beneficial. It's really good for you to get the perspective of stepping away from what you're used to and trying something different, trying the same thing in a different way or a different medium.
Cool. Thank you. And before we will move forward and talk about the design, I promise that we won't talk about that a lot, but honestly, I really want to ask a few questions about that. But finishing like our story about your ranch. So as I know that you have it was the gift for your birthday, and I'm talking about the vehicle to fight with the fire. And as I know that your neighbor had this one. Could you tell more? How do you use it? What, and just some details about that, because I guess when you said that you are a lucky man, I was thinking about this vehicle. It's not even legal, and it's not 3D printing, which we will talk about that later. It's a huge vehicle. How do you use it?
It is a huge vehicle. It's a lot of fun. So this here, let's see. This is our ranch.
Cool.
And it's about 50 acres. It's out in the cow country. My neighbor raises chickens, and most of my other neighbors raise cows. We have sheep here. And but in Northern California, the fire danger is significant. And it just so happens that my neighbor is the fire chief of the local fire department, the San Antonio Fire Department. His son is the fire chief in a town about 30 miles south of here called Kentfield, which is the town that I grew up in, actually. And so they were dairy farmers for 5 generations, but nowadays they're not making money off milking cows, so they have day jobs, and they're in the fire business. So you can see the dry summer grasses here. My wife was talking to the fire chief and was expressing her concerns about the danger. She said, well, what can I do about the fire danger? He said, why don't you get a fire truck? And she laughed and she said, how would I do that? And he said, I'll sell you one. So the local fire department had gotten a federal grant and they bought 2 new fire engines. And this was their old one. It's a 1978 Van Pelt with a Caterpillar prime mover on a Ford chassis. And he said, I'll have it at your ranch Monday morning. And he did. And he drove it by and we bought it for him for almost no money. I mean, it was very, very inexpensive. The problem is you need a place to keep one of these.
Yeah.
Because it's 10 meters long. And it weighs 30,000 pounds. What is 30,000 pounds? That's about maybe 13,000 kilos. It's huge. And here I am washing it like a proud father, but I actually learned how to use it and I keep it full of water. And one day in 2017, one of my neighbors came and banged on my door and said, there's a fire next door. And what had happened, it was a hot summer day. It was October. And my neighbor was dragging one of his chicken coops around and he struck a spark and started a fire. And so I looked at my buddy, the ranch manager. We were just sitting around, not doing much of anything. We go, we've got a fire truck. We can do something about this. So we hopped in the fire truck, and we drove over there. And it was a small fire. You can see it's not very big because the wind wasn't blowing. If the wind was blowing, this could have taken out the whole county. But because it was dead calm, we were able to squirt water on it. And this guy here he's the guy who's the fire chief of Kenfield, the town I grew up in. He's the son of the local fire chief who sold us the fire engine. And you can see in the background, the white pickup truck, that's his chief's car. And it was so embarrassing because it's a very fancy, sexy car with hidden red lights and stuff. And it's a kind of a stealth fire chief car, but he didn't have any firefighting equipment in it, not even a fire extinguisher. So I saved the day with my fire truck. And so you have to understand is that I'm a city boy. I'm the new guy on the block, and I'm a computer guy, and all these guys they're ranchers and farmers. They've known each other since they were kids. They all grew up together. They all went to school together, and I'm the outsider. And a lot of them know that my politics are very different from theirs, and my attitude is very different from theirs. But when I put out a fire, they thought I was okay. And
you was like Superman.
They, one by one, the neighbors for the next week, one by one, the neighbors came by and they just stopped by and they said, I just want to tell you, you did really good. Thank you. So it was a real lucky break that we had a fire that wasn't much of a threat, because believe me, I don't know anything about firefighting. And if it had been a real fire, I mean, it was a real fire, but I mean, if it had been a dangerous fire, I would have been probably burned to a crisp now. Cool. But it worked out to my benefit. So anyway, it's still out there. We I mean, all the neighbors know that when there's little kids around, I go, hey, you want to go for a ride in a fire truck? And we drive the fire truck around, and I turn on the lights and the siren. It's pretty exciting. But they didn't realize that I could actually put out fires with it.
Cool story. Thank you for that. So getting back to the design, not particular to interface design, but in the design, in these beautiful pictures. Yeah, okay. So you're like the ranchman, like really one. So getting back to the design as a design, like to solve the problem, if we talk about the meaning of this word. So when you was at the at Krupa conference in Kyiv a few years ago, and your talk was dedicated to the design, which shouldn't reflect in the bad meaning of these words on the wall. So could you tell us more about this idea? Because also Don Norman told about that, you told about that, and all clever guys from who created the design itself talk about that, and we need to understand that. So what is the best way to predict the future reflection? And do you have some system which you can share with the designers?
Well, there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, first off, there's design, and then there's the role of the designer in the corporation, and then there's the forces at work on the designer. So I think you have to talk about the external forces at work on the designer, in that it seems obvious that a business would want a designer to do their best work. But that isn't true. They don't. That's because designers work for users. And businesses today, in a world of runaway capitalism, don't care about users. Now, small businesses, little startups, of course they care, because small businesses, little startups, are built by practitioners, and practitioners care about users. But business people, they don't care about users. They care about business. They care about the success of their business. And it seems axiomatic that what's good for your users is good for your business. But this isn't true anymore. Is that you can be a corporate raider, and you can come in and you can take over a company and destroy the company and make a lot of money for yourself. You can be a middle manager, and your executive, your bosses want you to make more money. And the way to do it is by implementing negative black patterns, that abuse people. You can have, pop-up windows and phishing and deceptive messages and stuff, and pop-up ads that are constantly changing their size and getting in your face. And it's good for the clicks, and it's good for getting people to buy things that they don't want to buy. It's not good for the user, but it's good for the business's bottom line. What should a designer do? Nobody talks about this problem. The assumption is, as a designer, you do your best work, and your bosses will really like that, and they will promote you and give you props and compliments for doing something that's good for the users. But they don't. That's not what works. And so it's really interesting. At the very top of the business, there's the CEO, and the CEO is general. So look, I'm not talking about small businesses. I'm not talking about businesses with fewer than about 300 employees. I'm not talking about businesses that are not venture funded. Okay, because again, they're made by practitioners. They are trying to be good to their customers and to their users, and so the philosophy at the top of the organization is the same as the philosophy at the bottom of the organization. But at a venture-funded startup that has 300 employees, that is looking for a 5-year from start to finish cash out by selling to Facebook or Amazon or something, it's not run by practitioners. It's not run for the good of its users. It's run for the good of its venture capitalists, for its financial investors. And the thing is if all you're doing is looking at the dollar figure, then terrible, terrible things are really good for you. So here in the United States, the number one measure of the success of our economy is the GDP, the gross domestic product. It's the sum of all the money we spend. So the last 3 years here in Northern California, we've had devastating fires that have wiped out not just forests, but entire neighborhoods. I mean, 1,000 houses all together, just gone, scraped clean to nothing. This is really good for the GDP. Hurricane Katrina, wiped out New Orleans. And it's really good for the GDP. There's a huge freeze this last winter in Houston. I mean, they had a flood in Houston and then Texas froze. It's terrible. A lot of money got made. So this is the elephant in the room that nobody talks about. Everybody just goes on the assumption that your job as a designer is to design good things. But no. No. And so what do you do? See, if you're a CEO, your job is to be a vicious killer. That's your job. Make money. Nobody cares about anything else. If you're a practitioner down here, your job is to make the user happy. All you do is you focus on who the user is, what their desired end state is, what their goals are, what their motivations are, and then you marshal the appropriate technology to solve their needs. That's what you do as a practitioner. But let's say that you're an ambitious, young, smart person who starts out as a practitioner, but wants to go up in the organization. You want a better job, you want more authority, you want more control, you want more compensation, more money. That's when you discover that things are different, that you can't, that being a good practitioner, being a good designer isn't going to get you up in the organization, that the way to go up in the organization is to be an asshole. And it doesn't matter if your company is destroyed. Okay? What matters is, are you as a middle manager getting that big promotion because you're going to go to another company? This is in America, we trash businesses regularly, and it doesn't matter. We from the business point of view, it doesn't matter. So there was a toy store, a chain of toy stores across the country. It was a tawdry and not wonderful at all, but it was a big, successful American toy chain. It was called Toys R Us, and the financial guys came in and they did a leveraged buyout. They bought the company. They had the company borrow billions of dollars in order to purchase itself. That's how it works. It's magic. It doesn't obey the laws of physics. It obeys the laws of finance. And they bought the company, and what they did is they looted it. They took all the assets out of it, and all they left behind was this massive debt. And then the leverage buyout guys moved away, sold their stock, and the company just collapsed. And a respected American organization, a respected brand, something that kids all over the country said, "Oh, can we go to Toys R Us?" And just gone. And the leverage buyout guys walked away with billions of dollars. This happens all the time in America. So as a designer, this is what you're up against. So I call it doing origami in a house of fire. It's you're folding those little paper swans, and it doesn't matter how beautiful they are and how perfect and how Japanese they are, because they're catching on fire and burning. So it doesn't matter. And so that's the question that people struggle with, that interaction designers, UX professionals struggle with, isn't how do I do the best design? How do I serve my users? The struggle is how can I work within this organization? I'll bet of everybody who's listening that that's the number one complaint is it's not figuring out how to do good work. It's figuring out how to get your work done. Because people are sitting there and saying, well, we don't need to do that. Oh, we don't want to make it easier for people. We make a lot of money on tech support.
Okay.
It's the problem.
Okay. So guys, did you see, because people are texting like, oh, my pink glasses. So you just broke the pink glasses, but definitely, yeah, I agree. That's why I raised this issue, because you remember that all the people at Krupa conference, they were applauding you standing on their legs, because definitely it's about that. And we need to think about that. Just think about the future. How will it reflect on the world? And what should you do with that? It's really cool. Oh yeah, we have this picture from Krupa conference. Thank you.
That's where I did a selfie with 2,000 people.
I want to get back to your projects, and like maybe it will be, yeah. So it's quite sad what you said, but it's the reality, and we are here to change everything. So let's get back to your projects. And could you please tell us about your favorite project through your career, through your life, except marriage, for sure? Like, what was your favorite project and why?
Wow, my favorite project.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Maybe run again.
Well, I spent many years. I mean, it's a project I never built.
Okay.
I spent many years trying to start a company, get funding to build an email client, and because I felt that email was not. I think email is an incredibly powerful tool, and it was built in a really shitty way, in a way that I call implementation model, which means it's not modeled after the way humans think about mail or communication, but it's represented to the user as a fairly literal manifestation of the underlying technology. Namely, it looks a lot like the way the software works. I mean, it looks like the way the software works and not like the way the human mind works. And then in the 1980s, Microsoft did what they do best, which is they destroy competition. So anybody who had a different idea other than Outlook, Microsoft crushed them. It just aimed all their guns at the competition and just obliterated them. And it spent hundreds of $millions on advertising campaigns to destroy the competition. They drove everybody out of business. I call it Microsoft's scorched earth. They just, when they were done, there was Microsoft, and they owned the email world, and nobody would touch it. Nobody else would get into the email world because they go, I don't want to fight to the death with Microsoft. So then what you saw was text, SMS emerged. And it was not email, but it kind of took the place of email, But what it was an end around that Microsoft didn't attack directly. And then you start getting other communications things, like you find that there's email systems embedded in all the social media stuff. So there's an email system in Instagram, there's an email system in Snapchat, there's an email system in Facebook, and all these things. And what they are is they're shitty. They're really shitty, but they're not out there exposed to Microsoft. That's the only thing they have going for them. And then you start getting other forms of, you start getting other of communication to replace it. You start getting things like Slack, and now we're getting these voice only systems like oh, I can't think of the name.
Clubhouse.
Yeah, Clubhouse. Yeah, and there's several of those, and they're all trying to do the same thing, which is come up with new ways of communicating, because Microsoft's vision of email is so incredibly crappy. Okay, and yet that's the vision we're stuck with. And so what I envision, I mean, this was stuff I worked on 30 years ago, was a different way to look at email, and to have email be a real powerful communications tool that you could configure. And the way I envisioned it is your screen. I mean, I'm a big screen guy, not a small screen guy. And that's how I envision this. And you could translate this to a small screen, I suppose. I mean, what email, the Microsoft vision of email is the inbox. But the inbox is really crappy. It's a really crappy way. Imagine that the way you had your clothes stored was in a FIFO stack. You'd be selecting the shirt you wear based on the day it was laundered. It doesn't make sense. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to have little planets with moons flying around them. And a planet is, so if I were to send you an email and say, "Hi, Mike, how you doing?" That would create a planet, and there would be a planet floating on my screen, and it would be my communication to you. And when you replied, there'd be a little moon flying around it.
How many moons will be at the end if every message will be one moon?
Well, see, the thing is this is exactly the kind of thinking that gets people in trouble, because what you're doing is you're thinking of a planet and a moon as a little mini inbox. But that isn't the way it works at all. It is communications come and go. And at the time they're alive, they're really important, and you want to see them up front and big. But then when the communications don't happen, they fade. I should go like this. They fade into the background, and they get smaller and dimmer, and then they slowly slide down off the bottom of the screen and disappear, which is a reflection of the way. If you never replied to me, if there was no moon, that's what would happen to the Mike planet. It would just go away. And if we had more and more conversations, the planet would get bigger and the moons would get bigger, and they could start trailing each other around. You have little lines of moons. But the thing is, it would be a visual representation, not of email, but it would be a visual representation of the course of the conversation that I had with you. You see, now, there's 1,000 different ways to riff on this, to vary on it. And you have to deal with the fact that some people might have 60 active conversations. So how do you manage that? Do you have 60 planets? Well, what you need planet management tools. Okay, right now we have little folders and directories, which are mini little inboxes. But basically what they are is those little inboxes are just ways to hide stuff away with that shitty implementation model. It's an implementation model because inboxes are FIFO queues. And that's what email is. This is a FIFO queue. But that's not how humans think of their conversation. They think of multiple parallel simultaneous conversations. And that's the way it should be presented on screen, as conversations. And so when somebody sends me an email, it's either from somebody I know or from somebody I don't know. Okay. Well, that's a hell of a lot more important than whether it's read or unread. I mean, read or unread is something that somebody thought up, in 1975. And ever since then, that's been how our email is structured. And so guess what? People don't like it. And so they use Slack and they use Discourse and they use, you know, the Facebook Messenger and SMS and text, all this other stuff. And the reason why they use that is because the vision of what email is and what email can be was frozen in time in an incredibly shitty way. So I can't tell you, it's hard for me to express how many venture capitalists have shit on my ideas about email. They hate it. They hate it. They hate it. They hate it. And what they all do is they all go, oh, I don't know how to work that. And it's because their venture capitalists don't fund innovation. They fund sure thing. They fund expansion of known successes, you know, and you know, so in many ways that was my favorite project.
Cool, thank you. Because as a person who really loves space, I really like this idea. I even imagine it so easily. I could imagine some blazars flying there, some stars, some spaceships. Even Elon Musk will be there somewhere, standing on one of the moons. Definitely.
There you go. You could have to shoot a red Tesla through the sky. Yep. Now the thing is I don't really see it as necessarily being true to the metaphor of space. It could be just a 2D collection of little dots with things that are animated. So the thing is that the human eye is attracted to things that move, and it's attracted to things that move on the screen. So if somebody replies to an email, it would be animated. That's the key point. Not that it's a planet with a moon. I mean, that's kind of cute. You know, it doesn't have to be, but it does have to be something moving because it's something you need to pay attention to. It's something that you want to pay attention to. And you know, how many appointments, how many important things have you missed because your shit got lost in your inbox?
A lot.
What a bad solution the Microsoft vision of email is.
And it's still there. Unfortunately, it's still there. And a lot of, even like the new clients, they will do that. Okay, let's move forward because I feel the pain in my muscles on my face because I'm smiling and laughing too much. That's why I need to pause you.
Okay. What's the next?
Okay.
I'm ready. Here, wait a minute. Wait, I can, here, I'll do something for you here. There. That's our sheep.
Okay, it's so cute because we saw a lot of hands at Krupa conference, which you showed even instead of bullet points, and now we have sheep and goats. It's so cute. It's so cute.
So right now, I posted on Twitter some video, and I just took a bunch of video yesterday. It's lambing time on the ranch, and we have about 20 sheep, and each of them gave birth to 2 baby lambs.
Whoa.
And we have about 15 goats, and each one of them gave birth to at least 2. So right now there are 40 baby lambs and 30 baby goats on the property. So we have 70 tiny little animals, and they're very cute. They get old and not so cute really quick, you know.
Yeah.
But there's this time for about a month. They're about 3 weeks into this month where they're pretty hilarious. We go out in the afternoon and watch them. It's better than TV.
Cool to see sunset, to watch sunset and watch these cuties. Yeah, I had a lot of goats. My grandmother, she had a lot of goats and sheep. That's why I went there and I played with all of these cuties when they were small. It was really cool. Now I understand you a lot. You need to make some trips. Like we could combine. By the way, Projector, they could go. Yeah, I have an idea. We had Berlin Design Campus, and now we will have LAMP San Francisco Campus. And we will grab some people together and go to your ranch to spend like relaxation, like resort. It's a cool idea. Talk about the design in the evening. Cool places.
We'd love to have you.
Okay, I will think about that. A lot of people will already asked about that, and I want to ask our people, like our attendees today who are watching now. If you like this conversation, please put likes under this video. It will help just other people later to watch. Just because of this reason, I want you to put these like emotions. People will see that, oh, Alan Cooper was really cool if it has like 100 likes. That's why I will watch it, just because of that. And yep, sorry.
It'll make my head get bigger.
Maybe, we could try. At least we could try to do that. It could be funny. So let's move to another question. We have a few questions from our audience, but I think that I will combine them together. You already said few things. That first of all, you remember how was it, like if we are talking about the design and interface design and about these like companies 30 years ago, but you watch and like observe everything even now. And you said about like shitty companies and shitty design. And our people are asking again, like how the design was changed during this quarantine and this COVID time from your perspective. And also people ask like, what is about inclusive design? So let's talk from your perspective, how for the last 30 years, the design was changed, especially for the last year. And what about the inclusiveness and all of these small details which appeared and which are changing the world to the better, like the design to the better way? Yeah, so sorry for this wide question, but I tried to combine all of them.
Well, I think the number one most important thing that COVID has done is it has focused the attention of the industry on collaborative work over a digital medium. So it's group working without being physically in the same room. And we've made great strides in that. I mean, I think there's a lot of technology that's been refined, and I think there's a lot of design. I mean, people have had to pay attention to that, whereas before it was not that big of a deal. I mean, there was Skype. Skype is a terrible program. I mean, Zoom is a terrible program, but it's not as terrible as Skype, you know. And so it's how we progress. It's you know, we're getting better at it. We still kind of suck, but we're getting better. And that's a good thing, because being able to work remotely is it's something that's good for the environment, because there's less travel involved, there's less energy involved, there's less time wasted. And so it's a good thing to do that. But I'm not really seeing a lot of I'm not seeing the kind of design that I'd like to see, because I still see a huge amount of implementation model. I still see the underlying technology is the main way conferencing is presented, and I hope that we can get away from that, get away from being camera centric and microphone centric, and instead be user centric. And what is it that a user wants to see on the screen? What's important? And I also think that all of these meeting programs they don't necessarily distribute control. I mean, I should be able to rearrange the stuff on my screen. It's not good for me to have the screen be changing in front of me. Even if it's moving the person who's talking in up front, I should be able to control that. Now, it's okay to abdicate control, to say, all right, Zoom, you figure out what to put on my screen. That's okay. But you should be able to say, no, I want this person here, and I want this person here, and the person who's talking here, that's how I want to see it. And it should stay that way. And I'm not seeing stuff like that. Now, again, there's a huge amount of innovation going on with that right now. And so maybe that will happen. And somebody told me the other day they're working with a company that's doing a new Zoom-like thing, but it's made for conferences. So it's made to really support the 500 people in an audience and one person on a stage, and to simulate that. But I certainly hope they don't just do the obvious and have one big screen and 500 little ones. I mean, somebody needs to think about how to do that without the constraints of a physical stage and physical audience, because we're logical. We don't need to drag those artifacts of the physical world into the software world with us. So I want to talk about inclusive design, because there's this idea out there that the way to do user-centered design is by having the users be part of the design team. And I think that's really stupid. I really don't like that idea. I think that users are an incredibly valuable resource, but they're not interaction designers. They're not technologists. And they may, in fact, come up with a brilliant idea. So you can't throw out their ideas without looking at them. But if your job as a designer is based on the idea of getting the answers from the designers, you're just not doing your job. It's just lazy and crappy. And I mean, it's like the analogy that I use is good design is like wine. User's advice is like grapes. It takes a lot of time and effort and expertise to go from grapes to wine. And you can go, it's not that hard to go from grapes to wine, but it's really hard to go from grapes to good wine.
Exactly.
Okay. And so the number one thing that an interaction designer has to do is figure out who their users are and then spend time studying them. That's the number one thing. And if you as a designer aren't doing that, then you're not a designer. You're not an interaction designer. You're an artist. You may be a great artist, and I may want to buy one of your paintings and put it on my wall, but that doesn't make you an interaction designer. It's an interaction designer is somebody who solves real world problems for real world people. And you can't do that in an ivory tower. Now, I'm a software engineer. I don't like people very much. I like to stay in my workshop all by myself. I'm an introvert. The pandemic hasn't really changed my life that much. It's the way I behave now is the way I've always behaved. I spend all my time in my shop making stuff. So people have accused me of inventing personas because it's a tool for bringing the user into the conversation without having to actually bring the user into the conversation. And I'm not going to argue with that. I think it makes a lot of sense. But personas are not something you make up. Personas are something that that are distilled from the research that you do in the field, studying actual users. But then when you begin the process of design, you don't want the users involved. I mean, if you find yourself at a crossroads and say, well, should we do this or should we do that? Maybe what you need to do is go back out into the field and spend some more time with your users, because you should be able to answer that question, because you should understand what the user wants. So there's a problem in that inclusive design is often means bringing the users into the design process. And I think you have to be extremely careful with that, because it's a lot like saying we need to put grapes in every bottle of wine. This is not going to help. And you don't want to do that, because grapes and wine are not the same thing, even though wine is 100% grape juice. But they're transformed. Now, there's another aspect to inclusive design, which is this idea that design is something that's done by white men for white men to serve the needs of white men. And that's not very good. And that needs to go away. And so the best way to create successfully diverse services to a diverse world of users is to have a diverse world of practitioners. So your design staff should represent your user community. So if your user community is half men and half women, I would expect your design staff to be half men and half women. Mm-hmm. And if your user community is 30% non-white, people of color, Black people, then I would expect your design staff to be 30% non-white.
Cool.
That's hard for a lot of companies, because what they do is they do this meritocratic thing, meritocracy, where they say, oh, we're just hiring people who think like us, who have the same values we do. Well, yeah, that's white men. And what you need to do is you need to not hire lots of people who think the way you do. It was some famous man said, if everybody's thinking alike, somebody's not thinking. And so that's what you want to do, is you want to get a diverse bunch of people thinking. And of course, it's really easy to get that business where the women come up with an idea, they suggest it in a meeting, everybody shoots it down that says no good, don't like it, that's stupid, get out of here, you're dumb. And then 10 minutes later, a white man makes the same suggestion. Everybody goes, well, that's a brilliant idea. Obviously, we should do that. That's kind of rampant in our business, and we need to stop doing that. That's one of the many reasons why there's so few women practitioners in our world, is because they're tired of that shit from white men, from toxic masculinity, and we need to get rid of that crap. And it's hard to do that, because the only thing that matters is the bottom line, the CEO of the top. That's straight out of toxic masculinity. That's a white man thing. I mean, there are certainly women who do that, but they're just out masculine. They're just trying to be more like a psychopathic man that,
Hopefully very soon it will change, because we see that the world is changing nowadays. But again, it's like quite slow, but it's changing. It's changing.
It's changing, but it's the white men. This is certainly true in America, and I think I see traces of it in other countries. I think there's a lot of this in the former Soviet countries, is white men are seeing their power reduced, and they see it as an attack, and they're fighting with every weapon at their disposal. In the United States, the but I call them Troublicans, because they're it's a kind of a crunching of Republicans and that guy they had in the White House for a few years. And the Troublicans have pretty much abandoned all pretense of doing anything that's good for anybody. And they're just cranking up the fear. That's all they do is crank up the fear. Elect us because you're scared. You're terrified. There's Black people who are trying to take everything you own, you know. It's just fear. It's communists are going to come for everything you believe in, and they're going to confiscate your guns and force you to stop praying and emasculate Mr. Potato Head. And it's just fear in order to maintain power. And there's not even any pretense of we're doing this to make a better world. It's just, we need power. Give us power. If you don't give us power, we're going to scare you some more. Boo, boo. That's what the Republicans are doing.
I guess that after this conversation tomorrow, I will ask our managers to create the list of your quotes because it's really necessary. I'm sure that we will publish it, maybe even print it someday.
So I wrote this down. It's long. If I were Sarah Kendzior, I'd be able to make a short soundbite that's really good, but I can't do that. But this is what I wrote. I was asking myself this question. I said, what is the most important thing in the world of interaction design? Okay. And so I said, okay, well, I can answer that question. It goes like this. It's very much that origami in a house of flame problem. I said, when your number one job is serving the needs of the users and some external force tries to divert your efforts to some other goal, your number one job now changes to removing that external force. It doesn't matter if that external force has greater economic or political power than you do. Your job is clear. See, what this means is your job is being a decent citizen, taking care of your family, being a good neighbor, mowing your lawn, whatever, living life and being a good human. And then when the tanks roll down your boulevard, your job changes. Right? Exactly. Welcome to the world of user experience design. That's where we are today. The tanks are rolling.
Cool. I guess that I will make this tattoo on my body.
There you go. The tanks are rolling.
Cool. Let's move forward. You already mentioned, because there are a few questions about and also I have this question about 3D printer, about augmented reality, about VR. And before that, I just want to mention, you already said that everything is changing. For example, we had shitty Skype, now we have Zoom, and very soon everything will change and something new will appear. For example, it's not advertising for sure, but really this Saturday, it will be our third conference. By the way, it will be online Krupa, but we call it Krupitsa. It's the small one. But it will happen at the platform which is dedicated, and it was created strictly right after the COVID situation. And now it's cool basis and the platform just for the conferences. And I have an idea and the wish. I saw few conferences and which happen in VR world entirely. So you can go there, you have these flying avatars, you have the stage, even you have the water, which you go outside, you go by the boat with other avatars. Also, I discovered, and I definitely will check it for some of our conferences, the platform with 2D characters, like it was on Dandy Junior or some 8-bit consoles to play. It's really cool. Could you imagine to visit such conference? They create avatars for each speaker. You will be the small avatar. It's really cool. What do you think and how do you use nowadays? And what do you think about augmented reality, about VR, and especially about 3D printer? Could you tell us more? How do you use it? And what do you think? How will it reflect on the design of the world very soon?
Well, I'm unconvinced that having an avatar represent you is a good thing. I mean, I have an avatar. It's this guy, you know, and so, but it's unclear to me that VR is going to be useful in this business of remote get-togethers. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe having an avatar, maybe your avatar needs to look more like you. But I do think there are really promising areas for virtual reality. There's a lot of things that can be done remotely, and having a first-person view of actions that you're taking through a robot makes a lot of sense. I mean, I have a little drone I use to take aerial photographs of the ranch, and I have I got the little helmet that you put on, and it's got two little screens, and so I sit there. It's just like the Matrix, you know. I go up to the top of the hill, I sit down, I put this helmet on, and then my mind, my consciousness leaves my body as I fly the drone out into space. And I sit there motionless for 20 minutes while I'm flying around. So that's really useful, okay? And I do think that there's a lot of useful augmented reality stuff. Just being able to hold up a screen and hold it up in front of something and have the screen give you metadata about what you're looking at through that. I mean, there's a bunch of apps that do that, and there's a lot of proprietary ones, like companies like UPS, United Parcel Service. They have apps like that, and that's really powerful and useful, and you can imagine lots of uses for it. 3D printing is I bought a 3D printer 10 years ago.
Whoa. Okay.
And it was crap, and I didn't like it, and I ended up selling it and not using it. And I'm not I mean, 10 years ago, 3D printing. Okay, so when I bought my first personal computer, that was in 1976. And let me tell you, nobody owned a personal computer in 1976 unless 100% of their thinking was dedicated to making that work. I remember going around and telling people, everyone's going to own a computer one of these days. And people laughed at me. They said, why would I want a computer? And it was a reasonable question, because in order to make the computer work, you had to be a complete geek, and you had to be committed to that stuff. So 10 years ago, the world of 3D printing was also like that. You had to be a complete geek. And I was only a half and half geek. I was doing other things. And I thought the 3D printer would help me do other things that I was doing. But it doesn't. It was too primitive. You had to focus all your attention on the mechanics of 3D printing, not on 3D printing itself. And I'm sorry, I said that backwards. You had to focus everything on the mechanics of 3D printing and not on the thing you wanted to print. Okay. But I got to the point to where I could see that the quality of the 3D printers was getting better. They were getting more ready for people who weren't ready to commit their entire life to 3D printing. And I found that I would have a use for it to make 3D printed parts in the workshop as a supplement to wood and metal. And so I bought one about 2.5 years ago, and I love it. It's beautiful and it's very easy, and it is a kind of plug and play machine. I mean, it still takes experimentation, and the things that 3D printing can do aren't, well, let me put it this way. 3D printed objects, not everything can be 3D printed. And those that can be printed many of them are not useful because of the characteristics of layered depositing manufacturing. And there are other types of 3D printers, but then you're back into the world of being a 3D printer geek, of like resin bath print. I mean, they're very expensive, they're very hard to use, and you have to be an expert and be dedicated to it. But my 3D printer, I make little parts in the workshop and print them out. It's really handy. I use it all the time. I'm really excited by this product. It's a Prusa Mark III, and Prusa is a company in Prague, and it was founded by a 24-year-old man named Joseph Prusa, who's really impressive. So Joseph Prusa just broke all the rules. Number one, he did everything open source. So if you want a Prusa Mark III, you can go to his website and you can download all of the blueprints, all the plans, everything, all the software, everything for his product, and you can build your own. But for $700, I bought one from him. It was a kit. I spent a delightful couple of days putting it together, and it worked immediately. It's just works just fine. I'm everything I ask it to do, it does excellent. And so what Prusa did is it's very well known in the 3D business that you don't make production parts with a 3D printer. What you do is you do prototyping with 3D printed parts. And then when you get it right, then you do injection molding, because injection molded parts are stronger and cheaper. Joseph Prusa said, no. He said, I'm going to make this printer out of 3D printed parts. And there's a couple reasons for that. One of them is it allows him to do constant improvements to the physical part. So if somebody calls him up and says, hey, Prusa, this thing broke, what his engineers can do is open up a CAD program and enlarge the reinforcing part, and then probably test it. And then all they have to do is propagate it into their factory, which is composed of Prusa Mark III printers. And the new improved part is immediately part of the current shipped version. And the other thing is if you have, like I do, one that's 3 years old, I can go onto their website and download the new file and print it out and take my printer apart and put the new printer and the new piece in. So I can stay up to date. They do the same thing with their instructions. The instructions that came with the kit were fabulous because every time anybody had a question, they changed the text. Now they gave it to me as a printed book, but you could go to their website and get the latest and greatest updates. So if there was ever any question about anything, you'd go to the website. Sure enough, there'd be somebody, if I had a question, somebody else would have had the question, right? And so they would answer it. And so here's the other really interesting side effect of this is when he first started, he put together what's called a printer farm, which is he put about 50 of these Mark III printers in a room, had them printing out parts for Mark III printers, which they shipped out. So they were cloning themselves. Okay, well, it worked out very successfully. So he started getting bigger and bigger. And as far as I know, he now has something more than 500 Mark III printers in this printer farm printing out Mark III printers. But this is what's called eating your own dog food. They're using their own product to make their own product. They're putting their printer into production of their printer. There's no better proof of the reliability and accuracy and dependability of a product than to have the Prusa company using Prusa's printers to make Prusa's printers. I don't need any advertising. I don't need any stories. I don't need any testimonials. I look at that and go, it's good, or this guy's out of business tomorrow. So his parts aren't injection molded. And everybody in the industry has got to be going, you can't do that. And he's going, watch me.
It sounds a bit creepy, because once I was dreaming about that, like it could be a Terminator 7 movie about 3D printers which are producing themselves, and then they need, oh no, I won't get, because it's too creepy. But still, it's really cool, and I guess that really, I totally agree with you that it's the best advertising which you can even imagine. It's really cool.
It really is. And I'm really pleased that I'm really pleased to see innovation like this not in Silicon Valley.
Finally.
There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in the tech world in places where me as an American, who I grew up with American exceptionalism, and it's so wonderful to see somebody in Prague, or in Tbilisi to do something that you go, holy shit, why didn't I think of that? I mean, it's really good for my ego. And I think it's really good for the ego of a lot of Silicon Valley tech gurus to see the innovation, the creativity that's everywhere.
Cool. I want to read one message from our chat. It's not the question, it's just the words, which I totally agree, and I cooperate with these words. Actually, Mr. Cooper, we are very happy to see you in good health in a pandemic. And I totally agree with that. We are really happy to see you healthy, wealthy, and happy. Well, having 3D printers, having everything, like, it's cool.
It's I got my vaccination. I had my second shot 2 weeks ago. My wife got her second shot last week, and so we're not all of our children have been vaccinated, but we're waiting. Our pod consists of our neighbors, and they got vaccinated a month ago. So we're getting there.
Cool. I have the short question. I will rephrase the question from one of our viewers. So the question is, I will just, it's quite short. Do you believe in good design without the research, based just on the experience of the designer, and that's it?
No. No. I mean, so look, as a designer, what you're doing is you're coming up with creative ideas all the time. That's your job. And the solution is going to be built out of that raw material, because that's where it comes from. It comes from you, from your brain, okay? And certainly a lot of that comes from something that you thought up on your own. But the problem with that is that's designer-centered design. It's not user-centered design. And what you have to do is you have to identify your user and identify what they're trying to do, because you are not your user. You aren't. I don't care how good of a designer you are not your user. And one of the things that we know is that humans are subject to cognitive illusions. And one of the strongest illusions is the illusion that I'm right. It's called confirmation bias. And there's the joke is the research is in on confirmation bias, and it agrees with me. Confirmation bias says that when you hear people critiquing your stuff, when they say that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, you don't hear that. When they say that's good, you go, oh, they love it. My stuff is great. And so you, as a professional, have to fight that. That's your job. Your job is not to come up with brilliant ideas, although that's part of it. I mean, if you're a bricklayer, your job is to slap mortar on a brick and put the brick on the wall. Slap mortar on the brick, put the brick on the wall. Slap mortar on the brick, put brick on the wall. That's your job, okay? But that's not your goal. Your goal is to create a strong, straight, sturdy wall where the user wants it. I don't care how good of a bricklayer you are. If you lay the bricks all haphazard in the wrong place, that's no good. And if you build a great, big, beautiful, perfectly straight, very sturdy brick wall where you want it, that still isn't solving the problem. Now, in my experience, there's not a huge difference between what a smart, creative designer wants and what the user wants. But it's the difference between good design and shitty design.
Yeah, because we have this problem with Ukrainian, like Eastern European, like clients, because sometimes they come to you and oh, I want to save the money, I want to save the time, and you are the designer, you have a lot of experience, that's why I'm paying you, that's why just do it without any research. That's why I guess that it was quite like general question from the audience, and I agree with that. But finally, I just want to add from my side that don't forget that you need to change the clients themselves. Don't follow their request always. You are the designer and you can change, you can reflect on that. Don't just follow their rules.
Yeah, no, there's a really good answer to that. You want to save money? Don't hire a designer. I mean, the cheapest thing to do is to not hire a designer. The second cheapest thing to do is hire a designer, but ignore their design. Okay, but if somebody comes to you and says, I'd like to hire you, but I want to save money, walk away. Just walk away. You don't want to work with them. You will not have a success. It will not end well. So don't do it. Just don't.
Cool.
Yeah, that's easy for me to say. I'm retired. I live on a ranch. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. And I remember what it was like to be, 30 years old and trying to prove to the world that I was the smartest guy, around. And and believe me, when I was a young man, I was asked to do things that I'm embarrassed to say I did. Welcome to the human race. So I'm not condemning you and saying you're a bad person. What I'm saying is this is the force of negativity that you have to fight. You're not a bad person if you succumb to that extra drink or that extra donut, or you're just human. Humans make mistakes. They screw up all the time, and humans are idiots. And welcome to the party. But what you have to do as a human is you have to recognize that shit, and you have to say, okay, I'm going to work as hard as I can to not do that again. And so I understand that you're really smart. You have a lot of really good ideas, and all your design is beautiful in your head. But there's only one way to know that, and that's to do the hard work of identifying your users, figuring out what motivates them and what they're trying to accomplish, and then giving them that. And I also want to make one point perfectly clear. Your customer is not your user. Almost never is the customer the user.
Whoa. Okay, could you expand that?
So I'm using Zoom right now because you made me.
Okay.
I'm the user. I'm not the customer.
Uh-huh.
I did not make this choice, you know? And so what happens is if you go out and you talk to people who are Zoom customers, they will tell you very different things than Zoom users will tell you. So at your job, you have to draw pictures in Photoshop. You know, maybe they made you buy it, but is that really the product you want to use? Or is that one that they told you to use? Are you working on a Mac or on Windows? Who told you that? Are you, I mean, these days with mobiles, there are people buying products. And so you find users are the same as customers, except not really, because who's the customer for Facebook? Is it you who's using it? I mean, I went to the Facebook website and I downloaded Facebook. So I'm the customer, right? Yeah, not really, because really what it is I'm just a sort of a donor. I'm a metadata donor to the real customers who are the corporate people who buy that stuff and use it to recollections and sell me things that I don't want to buy. So you have to, this is one of the important things that interaction designers have to do, is understand that users are not the same thing as customers and identify who the users are. Your job is not to make your boss happy. Your job is not to make your customers happy. Your job is to make your users happy. Now, I have a firm belief. This is why I'm unemployable, is because I believe that my job is to make end users very satisfied and very happy. Okay? This is not consistent with the needs and goals of business. And this is how we started. You will find that there's this is what your users want and this is what your boss wants, and they're two different things. And you have to decide, what do you want? And if you want to get promoted and rise up in the organization and, you know, buy that new car and have a raise, then you're going to do what your boss tells you to do. And what your boss tells you to do is not going to be good for your users. Rarely. I mean, there are some companies where it's true, but in my experience, in small companies, it's about maybe a third of the small companies really care about their users. The rest are trying to become big companies. And big companies, they don't give a shit at all. They have marketing companies that tell everybody how nice they are, but then they're not nice.
Cool. Thank you for this answer. You know, I have the rule that the good conversation is when it leaves you some secrets. That's why I want, and also when it's less than 1.5 hours. That's why I want to roll up. But before we will leave this conversation, I want so now we have the list of the tips from Alan Cooper. So if you want to be the good designer, it doesn't matter, interface designer or graphic designer. So you need to think about your users or like customers instead of thinking about the needs of your boss. Also, you need to think about, you need to to do the research before that. What else to be the good designer? What are other tips from you? Now,
well, let's see. I think that in general, good software design is very informative. A lot of people think that software should be simple. And I don't think so. I don't think software should be simple. I mean, there's some software that should be simple, you know, but it depends on who's using it and for what. But in general, most people spend a lot of time with whatever software they spend time with. If you're spending time with software only occasionally, then I think you need to design the interaction very differently from if people are going to be using it frequently. And because if somebody's using it frequently, they start to know where things are, and they start to know how to use it. So they don't need as much hand holding. But if you're a first-time user, you do need hand holding. But what everybody needs to some degree is they need to know what the program is thinking. They need to know what is its state? What state is it in? And they need to know what process is it performing? And they need to know what are the consequences of that process. And they need to know what alternatives they can choose. So the one thing you don't want to see is a dialog box that says, there's been an error in your data, okay? Because while this is revealing of state, it's not very revealing of state, because it's not really telling you what that error is, and it's not telling you the consequences. When you say, okay, what's going to happen? Is your computer going to catch fire? It's not telling you what the alternatives are. It's not telling you the magnitude of the problem. It's not informing you. And it's the same thing when things are going good. So when we started this whole conversation, Clem was saying there was noise when I was talking. Okay. Well, why didn't the program tell me that? I mean, is there something more important that the program is doing? It's not telling me its state. Okay. And it should be telling me that. And so at Cooper, one of the things that we used an acronym, RVMF. We called it RivMuff because it's completely unpronounceable the way it's spelled. And it stands for Rich Visual Modeless Feedback, which means that whatever screen you have or whatever device you have or whatever, it should be showing you its state and its consequences and its alternatives in a way that you don't have to interrogate. You don't have to say, what state are you in? It should be revealing that automatically. And one of the ways to simplify interactions is to get rid of that. Okay? One of the ways to simplify getting around is to cut off your feet. It really simplifies getting around, but it's shitty. It's a bad solution. And this is part of the Apple design philosophy, which says, we're going to make this simpler to use by making it less powerful. I don't want that. I don't want it less powerful. I want to control how powerful it is. And I will make it more powerful as I use it more. And if it's revealing its state and its process and the consequences and the alternatives to me, then I can make that decision as a good user. And as a first-time user, I'm not going to know, I'm not going to see, I'm not going to care. This is one of the things that we call the principle of commensurate effort. Commensurate means appropriate, matching. So if I come to you and say, my hands are full, will you hold this for a second? You go, okay. But if I come to you and say, here's a bag of heroin, will you hold this for a month for me? I'm asking something bigger. And the compensation to you should be bigger. Okay? It's commensurate effort. So if I'm a first-time user and I want to know how to tweak tiny little details, I would expect to have to spend some time learning how to do that. It's commensurate effort. I'm asking for something pretty sophisticated. But if I want to know how to turn the machine on, that should be really easy. And what happens is people go, I've got this beautiful keyboard. It's really nicely designed. All the keys line up, except this key makes it turn on. And this key makes the whole thing catch fire. And it's like, do we really want those controls next to each other looking exactly the same? You want to, the catch fire one may be necessary, but you don't want to introduce that to the beginner. You want to bring that in slowly after they've used it for a while and let them say, let's move that control up. So rich visual modeless feedback, revealing state and process and consequences and alternatives. These are really important things in all software design, in all interaction design, and also undo. Everything needs to be undoable. And as I said the other day in a tweet, I said, the surface of Mars has been explored more than the capabilities of undo have. I mean, undo means, okay, that last thing you did, reverse it. Well, what if I wanted to undo the second to the last thing I did, but not the last thing I did? I mean, that happens all the time. So why isn't there a way to do that?
Because they don't want us to think that we can do that. It should be like in the real life, like, oh, what did I do at the previous party? I can't undo it, so it's like the real life. Yeah. I guess that is the only reason.
I was drunk and I said, what?
Cool. Thank you so much. The last question is from our audience that are you writing some book right now? Do you write? Should we wait some book from you or not? Do you work on some book?
No, I'm kind of done. I am. There are things that I'd like to write, but
Twitter is enough.
Well, that's where because on Twitter, I can, as has been demonstrated by political figures in the last 4 years, you can be a complete idiot and still tweet successfully. but it's the writing that I've done, the serious writing that I've done, is based on the serious work that I've done, and I'm not doing that work anymore. I'm just not. And so what it means is that were I to write, it would be, I like to think it would be good, but it would not have a lot of good examples in it because I don't have good examples. I'm still, to me, I have a 27-inch screen here. This is my world. And I do have a phone. I even have one of these fancy watches, but I use this to tell what time it is. I don't, and I use my phone is for emergencies, but I do my work on a big screen, and I understand that makes me an old fart and out of touch with the modern world. So I think the principles hold true, and when I talk about the broader principles like Rivlov, or undo, that applies everywhere and it's relevant. But if I were to delve into the details, which is what you need to do when you write a book, I kind of come up empty-handed just because I'm not working with clients every day like I used to. And so I hope that smarter people than me who are more in touch with things will write stuff. The problem is that so much, I see way too many designers saying, I did good work, we made money. Yeah, I'm not impressed by that. But I don't think that's a good way to measure the quality of your contribution to this world these days. I think you need to say, I made users very happy. That's what you need to do. And I recognize that if you do that, your boss is going to kick you in the ass, And so gosh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I have answers, but they're not good ones. You won't like them. But that's always been the case. It's always been the case that making the right choice is really hard.
Cool. Thank you. So subscribe, please, Mr. Alan Twitter. So please tweet more. We will be waiting instead of writing the book. Well, I really love the quotes which you named today. So that's why I will. I already subscribed. I created my Twitter account just 2 weeks ago, and I already subscribed to your account. So everything.
And I also have a blog on Medium.
Okay.
It's Mr. Alan Cooper on Medium, and you can find. I write usually a half a dozen posts a year, but I talk about this stuff.
Cool. Cool. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you, Mike.
Thank you so much. I spent 2 of these hours. It was like we were sitting near the fireplace and drinking the beer at your ranch. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the guests. Please don't forget, if you like this conversation, please put the like marks. And thank you so much, Mr. Alan Cooper. It was amazing. And I promise to all the visitors, all the attendees, that I will do my best to repeat this session in 3 years, because with the speed of changes in this world, I think that everything will change and we will see something new and we will talk about something else. Thank you so much. It was so much pleasure to do that.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.